Today, guys, I am taking you with me to practice. What are we going to practice on? Well, today it's about keeping my hand behind the ball during my push away and take away.
How'd you get to be so cool?
I recently watched a video on Brad and Kyle's channel. Their coach was talking about using a stick in your hand and knowing that when your hand is behind the ball, that stick is pointing out to the side. So as you come all the way through to here and through the back, if that stick is pointing to the side, your hand is behind the ball. When your hand starts to get to the side of the ball, you can see that the stick is pointing up or forward. And even if you go back, if your hand starts to come around, you can see that stick starts to point down or forward. And if you want to get inside the ball, that actually is getting the stick to be pointing upward. And so getting inside the ball, it's more up. I personally, my issue that I've got is when I do my push away and I start my takeaway, my hand comes out to the side of the ball. And the problem with this is even though I do a good job at getting my hand behind the ball here, which is what I'm ultimately going for, and I keep it in a good position through my downswing and through my follow through, the problem with having it to the side of the ball early on is that there's two issues. Number one, I have to actually get my body out of the way because the ball is here. So I actually have to lean a little, and my arm is here, you can see, is at an angle. And I want to keep it more straight under me because at an angle, it causes me to loop my swing a little bit, which if I loop it, then I'm having to get it back on a straight plane in order to hit my mark consistently. I'm hoping that if I get my hand behind the ball and I get in a straight plane, that I can actually do a better job of consistently hitting my mark straight on. The second thing I'm going for is that in order to go from beside the ball to behind the ball, if I use this as an example, I'm having to go from a position that's almost straightforward and then having to go into a position and moving my hand to getting it behind the ball. So that's probably about, I don't know, 60, 70 degree rotation that I'm having to do with my hand to get it into this position. I'm able to do that comfortably, but if I want to get my hand more inside the ball, then that just means I have to go from this position all the way around to getting inside the ball, and that's a lot of extra rotation and effort I have to put on the ball. What I'm hoping I can accomplish is by pushing the ball away more straight and having the hand behind the ball, is that going from this position as I go back into an open position, I'm only going from straight across to up a little bit to where I'm maybe only opening it another 10 or 20 degrees, as opposed to having to go not just the 60 or 70, but all the way around to maybe 80 or 90 degrees. So I'm hoping that I can get inside the ball with even less effort than what I was previously doing when I was trying to get further inside the ball. The ultimate objective is to increase the revs just a little bit by getting further inside the ball, as well as getting my arm on that straight swing plane so that I can more consistently hit my mark. I've already recorded my practice. It was really loud in there, so I'm actually we're gonna take you over to the computer. We're gonna watch the practice session, and I'm gonna diagnose it with you here together. So let's head on over to the computer. All right, so as we said, we're gonna take a look at my practice, and to begin with, we're gonna look at my normal swing. This is gonna give you an idea of what my starting point is, and then we're gonna go through the steps of what I did to practice, and then show you what I'm doing, and then show you the result. So to start out, we're gonna take a look at my normal swing. So in my setup here, you can see that I go forward and my hand gets inside the ball. Doesn't look terrible, my hand gets behind the ball, but we're gonna slow it down and take a look at what I'm actually doing. You can see as I push away and I get to this point, you can see how far outside my hand is in the ball. Additionally, how I'm a little leaned over to the right and my arm is actually, while it is mostly down, it is sticking out to the right a little bit. Now, as I get to the top of my backswing, I do a good job of getting my hand to behind the ball, and my fingers are actually in a loaded position, so they are a little bit on the inside of the ball. So this is actually really good. And as I start to go through, I begin the rotation, my hand is behind the ball, I'm in that loaded position with my hand or my wrist angled slightly to the side, so my fingers are inside the ball. And as I continue through, I start to uncoil, I release my elbow and my wrist, and I uncoil and let the ball roll off of my thumb and fingers. So everything is looking good from the backswing forward, but in that forward swing, my hand was way too far out on the side of the ball. Now, my rev rate isn't too terrible. It had been about in the 320s. It was about 360 here. But here you can see what I'm doing is I'm still doing the same push away and take away, but I'm incorporating the knuckles inside technique. So what I've done here is you can see my hand is still on the outside of the ball. My arm is still slightly angled to make room, and I'm leaning over quite a bit to the right. As I get that ball to the back, I open it up and get it to the inside of the ball, just like it was previously. Now the difference in this swing is as I begin my downswing, because I'm thinking about keeping my knuckles in close to my calf, I'm keeping that position longer. So right here at this point, you can see my wrist is actually angled even more, so my knuckles are closer to my ankle, so that as I start to rotate over, I am uncoiling and letting the ball roll off, and I'm actually getting a higher rev rate. And so I did increase from about 330. My other one was about 360. This is about 385. So this is what I had been doing previously. So the objective is, let's take a look at trying to straighten it out. Now, if I straighten it out, what I want to do is here you can see in a front view, I was getting on the outside of the ball. I'm using my offhand to push the ball over a little bit and get my hand more behind the ball. And I'm going to do this with one-step drills. One-step drills are the best way to blank everything else out and really focus on what it is you're trying to accomplish. So if we slow down the one-step drill, you can see what I've done here is I've used my left hand to push over. Now my hand is more directly behind the ball. It's still in a loaded position. I stay pretty loaded through most of the ball. As I go through, my hand is in an even stronger position than what it was previously. So it is inside the ball, and not just because of the angle of my hand, but I got my hand inside more. And as I'm coming through, again, in a strong position, and I'm able to uncoil, my elbow is bent a little bit here, I'm able to uncoil all of that at the release point and be able to get a good rotation on the ball. So by pushing that ball over with my left hand, I am successfully able to get my hand under the ball. The question is will it result in me hitting my swing plane more consistently, and will it result in a higher rev rate? Now I did that one-step drill a whole bunch of times. I only showed 2 here, but now I'm going to bring in all of my steps. So again, I'm really focusing on pushing my hand or pushing that ball over so my hand's behind the ball on my takeaway. And you can see as I push away here and I get to this point, now instead of being beside the ball, I'm not leaned over quite as far. My arm is straight down because I have more room for the ball. My hand is directly behind the ball. As I get to the back or the top of my backswing, I am not just inside, not just behind the ball, but much farther inside the ball. And this allows me, as I get through, to come through and be in a really strong loaded position as I'm starting to rotate the ball over, and then letting that ball roll off my thumb, uncoil my wrist and my elbow, and let that ball roll off and get into its rotation. So if we're going to let it go here, and we're going to watch a couple more here. So here we go again, full speed. And it didn't look too bad. My balance was pretty good. I like that. And then really the thing I was amazed by is how effortless all of this felt. So again, if we slow it down, you can see I was behind the ball, loaded inside, and coming around. So it didn't really feel like, typically when you make a small change, it feels like a massive change, but it didn't feel like a huge change for me. It felt pretty effortless. So what I really want to try to figure out is, this is great, is it actually accomplishing more revs? I'm standing farther left, I'm playing more of the lane, but is it because I'm throwing it slower? Is it because I do have more revs? Is my tilt different? My tilt looked pretty decent, or pretty much the same as what I had before. First, we're going to take a look at some front angle views though. So this is a front angle view of my original swing. And what you're going to notice here is that I'm not pushing the ball over with my offhand, and my hand ends up getting to the side of the ball. And this is what I'm trying to correct. So this gives you a front view, and my arm is a little bit at an angle here. Even though as I get to the backswing, my hand does a good job of getting behind the ball. You don't see it very well because my body's in the way from this camera angle, but I'm behind the ball. And as I begin my downswing, I'm staying behind the ball. My elbow is bent a little bit, and I'm coming through the ball fairly nicely. So I have a decent release at this point, but I'm just trying to see if I can make some things a little better. And then here you can really see how the ball is rolling off my hand, and so I'm able to achieve the rev rate that I do with my original style. But with the new style that you see right here, as we slow this down, you're going to see I'm going to use my offhand to kind of push the ball to the right a little bit so that it gets my hand in position to where at this point I am more directly behind the ball. It looks like I might be outside at this angle, but that's just the angle of the camera. I was pretty much directly behind the ball at this point. And now, instead of behind the ball, I'm actually inside the ball a little bit at this point. And being inside the ball allows me, as I come through, I'm much more effortlessly being able to get inside the ball, come through, and again, in a strong position where my elbow is just a little bent. I'm in a strong power position with my wrist, and I uncoil everything at the release point here. And so while I'm achieving all of this, this is great, but it's kind of a moot point if I'm not gaining anything in the revs other than maybe hitting my swing plane better. So if we go back and take a look, my measurements that I did when I do my normal swing that you see here, it used to be about 325. It was actually 360 there. In this case, it was about 385. This was the same original release, but trying to scrape my cap with my knuckles. And this is the new release, in which case just that small adjustment, I was actually able to count 18 revolutions on the ball looking at that orange speck. I didn't put tape on the ball, so I just used the orange logo that you see on the ball. And I was able to calculate the time, which was 2.59 seconds, which I measured multiple times over to make sure I was in the right time frame. Rev rate ended up being about 417. So I think that what that shows is that I'm able to actually increase my revs. In fact, that's the first time I've been over 400 revs. And my ball speed didn't look slower. In fact, the time that it took the ball to get down there was pretty much the same in all of the measurements that I had taken. And so my speed is very, very similar, but I'm getting more revs out of the ball. I'm getting 1 or 2 more revolutions out of the ball in that 60 feet that it takes for the ball to get down the lane. So I'm successfully achieving getting more revs. And hopefully, only time will tell, but hopefully I'll be able to hit my mark more consistently, because I now, instead of having my angled arm swing and having to loop it a little, I'm a little bit straighter on that swing plane. And if that equates to me following through more in the same spot and hitting my mark more consistently, that will hopefully lead to higher scores. So time's going to tell. This was my first time practicing this. It's obviously going to take a lot more times of practicing before I get it really nailed down, but I've got league tonight, so I'll be able to test it there. I have the RPI PBA regional this weekend, so I'm going to be able to test in the practice session, and if I feel good with it, I'm going to implement this as much as I can during the RPI qualifier, and we'll see if it leads to higher scores, and we'll see if I hit my mark more consistently. If I don't, I think it's more just a matter of I just have to continue to practice it, but we'll see how it goes. Hopefully you guys all learned something from this. I wanted to, instead of just doing a typical tutorial, I wanted to actually take you with me and show you what I go through a practice session. The key really being those one-step drills. Like I said, I only showed 2 of them, but you want to do them over and over and over again. So one-step drills are your friend. Do those to try to practice and master whatever it is you're focusing on. But I wanted you to take a look at what I go through with practice. And if you like the video, hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't done that already. And otherwise, we'll see you on the next video.
How'd you get to be so cool?